Hello, human beings. Yes, that's kind of mood lighting. It's also late. I'm going to bed soon. I just finished Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8. I wanted to do a quick rambly kind of review before I forget too much about the game. This is the most lopsided, uneven AAA game I have ever played. This is like 3 different teams worked on this game. It is a quality product through and through. It is an incredibly well-made game for the most part. I think compared to like Sony first party, and obviously because they're on multiple pieces of hardware and they're not specialized, you can definitely tell it's not the cream of the crop in terms of production value, but it's pretty gosh darn good. It's good, people. I'll give you my score right now because the rest of this is going to be spoiler and sort of deep dive, although hopefully a quick dive because I don't want to bore you, but I'll give you the gist. But my score on a scale of 1 to 10 as an enjoyable, fun game, and not all games have to be fun, but when I say fun, it's either engaging or fun, an enjoyable experience you're glad to go on. I'd say it's like a 6.5 out of 10. 6.5 out of 10. I think that's fair. I think as a production, it's like an 8.5, not quite a 9, but 8.5 out of 10 in terms of the performances, the graphics, the sound, the control, the moment-to-moment abilities that you have as a player. All those little pieces of the game are really well done, but it just doesn't. It's a very weird game, and to me, it's an important game, not just in the Resident Evil franchise, but also I think as a, post Last of Us, God of War, Last of Us 2, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, when you having played a lot of those games, the bar is so high now for sort of single player narrative games that clearly aren't indie and are trying to go, I don't know, they're trying to go toe to toe with Ghost of Tsushima, certainly not. But in terms of, it's like you've gotten spoiled by a quality of whether it's visual or whether it's writing or performance, and this game is clearly lacking. So, I would say it's like a B movie, like a good fun B matinee, but it actually isn't. This is the weird part about this game. This game really, look, if you're a Resident Evil fan, this review, whatever this thing is called, Impressions, is not for you. Because I've seen you guys online, and that's fine. You're going to defend it till the cows come home. What I'm about to say, you are going to defend your franchise. Fine, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Do that if you want to. But I'll tell you, I'm a big RE fan, but I'm not a hardcore RE fan, right? I loved Resident Evil 2 Remake. I loved Resident Evil 4. I loved RE7. I played the whole thing in VR. One of my favorite game experiences of all time. I am not a fan. But I could, I get Claire mixed up with Jill Valentine, and they reference somebody named Spencer in this game. I'm like, I think I've heard that name before. I'm not deep into the lore, okay? So if you are, fine, go with God, what have you. But for most people, I think this game is going to be really confusing because it really is like 4 different parts, right? If you played the demo, I didn't care for the demo. The demo left me cold. The opening part of the game is the demo, like give or take. The first 40 minutes is the demo. And I was high as a goddamn kite when I was playing it, and so it was really scary. But if I hadn't been on the marijuana, I probably would be like, yeah, this is, I'd stick with it because I bought it for $60, but it was the demo, and the demo left me cold. Now, the meat of the game is fantastic, okay? The meat of the game, which is 80%, I spent 17 hours on the game. But I did everything. I didn't platinum it or anything. I'm not that good of a gamer. But I collected all the treasures. I found all the little tchotchkes. I pretty much maxed out all my weapons with the merchant. That middle section was probably 12, 13 hours, and that was brilliant. That was like an 8.5, maybe even a 9 overall game if they would have stuck the landing, right? It was just it sounds so dorky to say, but it was like a love letter to horror. It was like every boss represented in some ways a different genre or a different style of horror, right? From the tall lady vampire, you had this marionette woman with her crazy dolls and everything. You had this kind of weird mutant fish dude. Then you had Heisenberg, which is, I don't still understand that character that well, because the guy you actually fought looked more like Hagrid from Harry Potter, I think, if I remember correctly. But overall, though, that whole section, the worlds you got to explore, the sense of ambiance, the sense of the monsters, it was scary. I don't get scared unless I'm high, but the dollhouse sequence was incredibly cool. If you tend to be scared, there's this mutant baby that chases you through the house, and you're hiding in closets, and you're hearing it laugh, and then when it can't find you because you've hidden, it starts crying off in the distance. It's very weird. And so I was in, man. I was like, and also what was really cool is you sympathize with the bosses in this game. I tweeted the other day, the bosses, and then there's this one shot at the end with the factory of all these bodies that have been sort of, kidnapped from the village, manipulated into these super soldiers, blah, blah, blah. And between that and the sympathy you have for all these boss characters, that is sort of born out of, things that you find in writing and things that they say, and when you're fighting them, things they say, they don't feel like cookie cutter cardboard bad guys for the most part, right? And there's something it feels like, whether it's conscious or not on the part of the team, there's a subtext to this game that I didn't really pick up on RE7. RE7 just kind of felt like, we like horror tropes, let's make a game. This feels like that, but there definitely seems to be, it resonates more at some emotional level. So I appreciated that. The boss fights were all creative. It wasn't just like bullet sponges. What brought me out of the boredom of the demo was when I first took on one of the daughters of the tall vampire. I can't say her name, Madame Duskapaka. I don't fucking know. And I didn't realize, it kind of made it clear to me, but it was such a neat revelation to realize, the way I kill these characters is I lead them into the light. And then because they're vampires, and it's actually the cold in their case, they will become vulnerable. And then I can fucking go to town and shoot them and they turn to dust. And it's really satisfying. And from that point up until the factory, it was wonderful, right? Then you get to the factory, right? So you have this weird part at the beginning that's boring. You have this great middle section that's phenomenal. Then you get to the factory, which is the same shit the bed they did with RE7, which is like you have this beautiful setting, this crazy family, these wonderful monsters, this wonderful sense of being in this place. Hey, let's suddenly go to a fucking cruise ship lab thing with elevators, and we're on floor B6 and basement 12, and let's take the elevator and read the map. And I was, what the fuck, man? Totally shit the bed. This game does it worse. They put you in a big fucking factory. Every room looks the same. You could argue that horror, like boiler rooms and stuff, fit the motif, or fit the idea of every chunk of the game is a horror trope, but there's not a really cool boss. It's Heisenberg, who just kind of looks like the character from Darkwatch, the old Sammy game from High Moon. Not exactly, but he's that kind of vibey character, trench coat, hat, glasses, and whatnot. It just kind of feels, like boring. And I was like, I'm going to finish for the sake of finishing. Okay, that's your third part. That brings the game down really low. Like, not really low, but it's at like an 8.5, a 9. That knocks it down to about a 6. About 7. And then you get to the end. Now, there's 4 fucking endings to this game, okay? It's like Lord of the Rings shit. You've got the boss fight, where you go up against Heisenberg. You actually do fight Heisenberg. It's so weird. It's like you've gone from vampires and werewolves and sea creatures and all these organic horror zeitgeist classics, and suddenly the final guy you're fighting has just made some mech out of trash with a little bit of bio components. And don't worry, Chris Redfield shows up and gives you a little go-kart meets tank, and suddenly it's like that battle in Metal Gear 2, I think it was, when you were actually in the mechs. It's like, what the fuck is this, right? So it totally doesn't fit. I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't fit at all. And then at the end, the big bad guy comes and she rips your heart out. Your character, Ethan Winters, who's a terrible fucking character. Terrible fucking character. He whines. He's not compelling. He's not interesting. I like his drive to save his kid and his family, but it's really, not a good character. He's very unappealing. To me anyway. But she rips out Ethan Winters' heart. He dies. And then suddenly now we're playing Chris Redfield. And we're playing what looks like a single player version of Left 4 Dead. It just becomes like a fucking arcade shooter as you make your way to, I guess, the big bad boss something or other, whatever. Then you become Ethan Winters again because he's like I don't know what the fuck he is. Chris Redfield finds Ethan's wife who's been captured from the first game. And she's like, oh, there's things about Ethan you don't know. And then it cuts to Ethan and he's dead, but he's alive and he's talking to this little girl. And then she's like, you're dead, but you're made of the mold that was in the house in Louisiana. Your whole body is mold. And I'm like, okay, so what? And then he comes back to life and he fights the big bad guy at the end. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? None of it makes any fucking sense at all. And then you've got another epilogue where you play the daughter he's trying to rescue, who looks like she's like a teenager now. She's coming into her own with powers and things like that. She's clearly going to be the protagonist or the enemy, probably protagonist though, of the end of this trilogy. They've said it's a trilogy. And that's kind of cool. At least they wrap it up. But then it's just kind of like at the very end as she's driving away with, I guess it was the Chris Redfield's team, Raccoon, whatever the fuck they are. I don't know. Suddenly, it looks like the ghost of her dad just appears walking beside the car, and then it goes to black and the game's over. So you're like, the whole last act, from the factory to the weird boss fight to the fact that he's dead, but he's a ghost, but he's made of mold. But wait, what? And then that you play Chris Redfield for like 8 minutes, and it's like a fucking arcade shooter at Dave & Buster's where you're getting tickets to go get some fucking little basketball and a net to hang on your office door. It's like, what the fuck am I playing? And so I get it, right? I get there are people out there that'll be like, no, dude, that's Resident Evil, man. It's always been that kind of weird collage. Fine. Things have changed, though. Okay? Games are written better. I don't think Resident Evil should ever be written any more than I didn't like Uncharted 4 because I thought Neil Druckmann and his team brought too much gravitas to what was really meant to be a good B high adventure game. I don't think you want to make this some kind of, deep and emotional, no, that's not what I'm talking about. But there's a point now, games have gotten good enough. Ideally, they'll tell their story in gameplay and not cutscenes. But even with the ones that are using cutscenes today, the writing is good enough that when you encounter something that feels like a relic from like last generation or certainly all the previous generations before, where it's like, and at the end, it was really a ghost, but I know the producer on the title really likes the whole atomic thing from Godzilla era, so it's a ghost. But he's motivated because he's got this waste inside of him that's biotoxic, and that somehow channels the consciousness of his dead wife, and she's guiding him. And at the end, you're supposed to be all emotional because the consciousness of the goo inside of him comes out and forms a little miniature of his wife in his hand, and they have a moment, and then she dissolves, and he's like, no! And the music plays, and you're supposed to go, oh, that's really cool, Capcom. No. That's what I just described to you is not this game, but it's as batshit crazy and not in a fun way, not in a lollipop chainsaw way, in a either too many cooks in the kitchen way or in a the people writing this thing just went off the fucking reservation and figured, who cares? Let's just fucking get it done. I have no idea. But the opening of the game is dull for about the first hour. The back end of the game for about 4 hours is really dull and weird. And not surreal weird, but weird. Like it doesn't work. It just feels stupid. The middle is awesome, and it's worth playing if you know that going in. I will tell you, I loved the world of the village. I thought that kind of Bavarian, Eastern European sort of, I guess Bavaria. I'm not so good with the geometry, folks, but the world was great. The art was great. The sense of setting was great. The core play is really fun. I love the merchant. The merchant character is just awesome. He is a great new character. He looks good. He animates good. His voice acting is perfection. He's just a cool dude, and I want to see more of him. But overall, though, yeah, this was. If you're the Resident Evil folks after this, I think you're really going to be needing to go, what do we do with this franchise? Because the guys who make this game, the ladies who make this game, they have a brilliant horror game in them, like a pure horror game, right? Because, and I don't mean it wouldn't have action, but it's like, just get rid of the crazy. Just trust me. Make your Silent Hill, Capcom. You guys could knock it out of the goddamn park and make a classic. Okay? This idea of Resident Evil it doesn't really work. It never really worked. It was always kind of dumb, right? Now it's really dumb. When it looks as good as it looks and you have other things to compare it with, it's just dumb. It's like, pick a fucking lane and own that shit. It would literally be like you're watching that great horror movie Hereditary, and halfway through it's like, let's have the mom and the daughter who makes the clicking sound go into a bank, and there's just like a big hostage scene where they get into a gunfight. And then we go back to the slow burn horror. It's like, what the fuck am I watching? That's what it feels like. Anyway, but I would love to see this team be given the freedom to sort of work within pure horror. I played a game earlier this year, which is so far my very favorite horror game in a long time, called Devotion. It's like a 2.5-hour game. It was banned because of China. You can buy it on redcandlegames.com. They're the developer, the publisher. And it proves to you that great horror is still out there. Resident Evil's middle section proves, I think, that fun, great horror is still out there. But the whole package it just collapses in on itself. And the fact that this is getting 9 out of 10 reviews, 8.5, come on, really? Really? Come on now. Anyway, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 gets a 6.5 out of 10. That was Adam Sessler meets William Shatner. I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to my ramble. Can you believe it? If you made it to the end, you're a goddamn champ. You're like, Jesus, Jeffy, shut the fuck up. Anyway, have a good night. See you soon, pal. Bye.